Hello everyone, welcome to IAB Europe's Digital Transformation webinar organized by the Education and Training Committee. Today we are here to discuss and shed light on the what, the why, and the how of digital transformation. My name is Neslihan Olcay, and I am the CEO of Wavemaker Turkey, as well as the chair of the IAB Europe Education and Training Committee. Today we are here together with Jeanette Duvebrandt, the engagement lead of Northern Europe at Google Digital Academy, Ilse van de Vivere, the director of digital and one-to-one customer journeys at Proximus, Christophe Glorieux, managing partner and founder of Digipolitans, Jonathan Robert Shaw, head of strategy, online and technology at BBC, Iona Anescu, Managing Director of IAB Romania, and Robert Anghiel, Daily Banking Tribe Leader at ING Bank Romania. In the next 90 minutes, each of our speakers will share their points of view on digital transformation and will give us real-life examples of how they handle digitalization at a corporate level, as well as the challenges they face along the way. In the last 25 minutes of our webinar, we will have a panel discussion and a Q&A session during which you can ask your questions to our speakers. Before we start with the presentations, I'd like to share a couple of important notes with you all. You will be muted throughout the webinar. You can ask your questions using the question panel in the top right of your screens. Your questions will be covered in the Q&A segment after the presentations and the panel section. The section is recorded, and the recording will be automatically shared with the participants, with you all, 2 hours after the event. It will also be promoted on the IAB Europe website and social media channels from which you can share and also see what happened throughout the event. Our first speaker is Jeanette Duvebrandt. She has been working for Google for the last 12 years. Since year 2017, she has been leading the Google Digital Academy team, handling external education for Nordics and Benelux. Jeanette will walk us through the 5 common themes companies must nail when going through digital transformation. She will also be joined by Ilse van de Vivere from Proximus and Christophe Glorieux from Digipolitans, both from Belgium, as they share with us how Proximus built a machine to sell more. Over to you, Jeanette.
Thank you for inviting me. So as you said, I work for Google and the team called the Google Digital Academy. We create and deliver strategic digital transformation program to clients and agencies. And I'm Swedish and I'm based in our Swedish office. I've been tasked to speak about digital transformation, which is a topic I could talk about for a very long time. But since I have 15 minutes, I will give you an overview of how we at the Google Digital Academy see digital transformation. So we can change slides, please. Charles Darwin, the English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, best known for his contributions to the science of evolution. Looking at his quote, I realize adapting to change is actually a problem of all times. You could say Darwin was the world's first head of digital transformation. He formulated this rule that now applies stronger than ever, given that the rate of change is faster than ever. Can change slides, please. And speaking about change, we've seen what can happen to companies if they don't adapt to change as fast as they should. As Don Strickland, former vice president at Kodak, so eloquently put it, shift happens. Companies that fail to see the direction of the wind is blowing and that aren't ready to act against their immediate interest will surely fall behind. And the headline stories that we hear about are the most unforeseen disruptions, where the largest accommodation provider, as you see here, Airbnb, owns no property and the most valuable retailer, Alibaba, holds no stock. So the opportunity for companies to disrupt your business basically emerge when you are slower than consumers and technological development. To be and stay successful, you have to reinvent yourself, and if you don't, you'll become obsolete. Next slide, please. We've seen a few patterns and topics that tend to be quite universal across companies that are going through transformation. This is in no way a full overview of what digital transformation is. However, it's almost certain that you'll bump into these throughout your journey, and they work like the weakest link principle, which means if you overlook one, then all will fail. So let's go through each one. Customer centricity. Jack Ma, co-founder of Alibaba, says that we are in the era of C2B, consumer to business, an era in which customers will dictate to companies what they need, and only companies that accommodate them will thrive. Many companies, especially the large ones, are siloed, which means different teams are responsible for different parts of the customer journey. Different sales channels, customer services, product development, brand management, etc., etc. And these often don't use the same type of identifiers or tags. And as a result, a loyal customer that is touched on by all departments keeps being treated like a new customer every time he or she moves from one department to the other. It's like going into the same store every day, while the owner of the store never gives any sign of recognizing who you are. And the important learning here is to not allow your org chart to be visible in how you treat customers. Remember why you do what you do. In the end, everything starts with the customer. So let's move on to tech, data, and automation. And this is obviously a broad topic. However, there is one common challenge that we see in most companies. It is the gap between specialists and business leaders. And the problem with technological developments is that they're so fragmented and move so fast that only specialists can keep up with them. That wouldn't be a problem if these specialists would speak normal, understandable language, but unfortunately, many of them don't. The specialists have a tendency to speak in a language that is hard to understand, and those that aren't in the field of knowledge, as a result, can be very hard for business leaders to see the implications of technological developments on the wider business. So the way to nail this challenge is to bring business leaders and specialists in one room to explore what it would mean if you would apply automation to all the work marketing does. That often means a somewhat junior person needs to work on strategy together with a more senior person in the marketing organization, for instance. Now let's move on to people operations. Digital transformation obviously affects who you hire, who you promote, how you incentivize people, and many more people-related topics are affected. But looking at the company I work for, Google, if you would ask any Googler what their favorite thing about Google is, they'll likely answer the people. I have worked alongside an archaeologist, a former military ops commander, a psychologist, and an Olympic medalist. We hire generalists with diverse backgrounds, people who have a history of learning new things and who will be interdependent on one another for their unique perspective. The best way to fill your company with innovative, adaptive people is simple. Hire them. This is why we say hiring is the most important thing you do. Many executives say truthfully that their company's most important asset is their people. But when it comes to hiring, is that where they spend their time? Or is hiring handled by HR people and outsourced to recruiters? At Google, our execs have made hiring a top priority since the early days of the company. One way we do that is to hire by committee. A hiring manager does not get to decide who she hires. Committees do that. And this makes sense. Oftentimes, employees are hired for a particular role, but then the role changes, or there's a reorg, and she ends up working for someone else, or she takes another job at the company and another after that. The decision of whether or not to hire someone is a company decision. It's too important to be made by a manager who may be highly motivated to fill this position quickly. The other thing we do differently is look at 4 characteristics. So human nature when hiring for a job is to look at experience, right? Can this person do the job? We look at 4 different characteristics, and these apply to every candidate across every function within Google. And the first one is role-related knowledge, which is quite obvious. It's experience in this particular role. Secondly, we look at general cognitive ability. How smart is this person? And how well does she think on her feet? The third one is leadership. Ability to see problems, take ownership, and lead a group of people in solving them. The fourth and the last one we look at is something that we call Googliness. That's a funny word, but it's an important trait at Google. So it means teamwork, not me first attitude. It means focus on the user and the customer. It means demonstrated ability to handle ambiguity and rapid change well, and work well in a situation where you aren't being told what to do. And as our former senior vice president at People Operations says, we hire for capability and learning ability before we hire for expertise. There are a lot of things that senior execs can't control, but one thing they can control is how the company hires. They can invest personal time in the hiring process, which sends an important signal to the company that hiring matters. Culture of innovation. At Google, we talk about having big, audacious goals, about being uncomfortably excited. One of the biggest and most audacious goals came to light in the early 60s. In 1962, at Rice University, John F. Kennedy told the United States about a dream he had, a dream to put a person on the moon by the end of the decade. No one knew if it was possible to do, but he made sure a plan was put in place to do it if it was possible. And that's how great dreams are. Great dreams aren't just visions. They're visions coupled to strategies for making them real. And that's how you drive innovation. Innovation can't be ordained. However, you can create an environment where it will evolve organically. I'm guessing everyone has heard the expression shoot for the moon and you land in the stars. But that concept doesn't often apply to the workplace. You're simply seen as not reaching your goals. At Google, we are tasked with creating goals that are unachievable. Meeting expectations means achieving 60% of that goal. In other words, we've failed by 40%, and that's okay because we learned something along the way. There are 2 different types of approaches to failing. People with a fixed mindset and people with a growth mindset. When people with a fixed mindset fail, it's personal. Failing means confronting the limits to their ability, and as a consequence, it must be avoided at all costs. For people with a growth mindset, however, failure is valuable. They know they need to improve, and identifying their flaws is the first step towards making things better. At Google, the growth mindset is one of our core values. It's a view that embraces failure, but it's also a far more positive approach to life because you can try something new without sucking at it first. And of course, no one knows for certain what the next great innovations will be or where they'll come from. For any company that wants to keep innovating, the first step is to get the culture right. Lastly, vision and leadership. There's a huge role for leaders in getting all of this right. In fact, a common complaint of middle managers when trying to contribute to transformation is leaders not being sufficiently on board. And digital transformation is inevitably connected to barriers. Because you're trying to change a system that has worked well for many years, and because changing a large organization is always hard, barriers therefore can never be an excuse not to go through transformation. Leaders can make a big difference here. They can orchestrate the balance needed for successful transformation, and they can get people uncomfortably excited about change and mobilize them. And they can get people to be proud of the changes already achieved, which provides a feeling of homecoming. So if you're a leader, think about the people in your company. How will you encourage them to pick up more work and more risk? And how will you celebrate their successes? And how will you celebrate the learning from failure? To stay competitive in the long haul, a company must be open to change. Thanks for listening. Now, I'd like to present to you a real story of transformation as it happened. And I'd like to welcome Ilse and Christophe.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, Jeanette.
Hi.
Shall I start by introducing myself?
Yes, please.
Okay. I see on the slide that it's still my brown job title, but that's not a problem. Then I can explain you in live. So I recently became digital director at Proximus. And that's the department in which we now group all digital commercial activities, going from digital sales to digital marketing to CRM to media to customer journeys. And that's a recent reorganization in our company, which we will explain later on in our case, because it's a consequence of our case. Proximus is the company that we work for, and Proximus is actually the largest telecom company in Belgium. We are the incumbent telecom operator, and we offer convergent solutions, so combining fixed phone, mobile phone, internet, and TV. And we also have a large B2B department in which we also offer telecom services, but also ICT services. So as said, we serve both the residential and the enterprise market. And our vision is to become a digital service provider, going beyond only offering pure telco solutions. And the standards that we put to ourselves is to have similar NPSs of Netflix and Amazon. So we still have a way to go, but the ambition is there.
Thank you, Ilse. And Christophe, could you tell us a few things about yourself and your role at DigiPoliticians?
Yes, maybe it's also a good idea to press the button and to go to the next slide. And the slide, yes, another one, please. Yes, and another one. Perfect. So hi, I'm Christopher. I'm managing partner and founder of DigiPolitans. And DigiPolitans is based in Brussels, in the center of Europe, and we support companies in leveraging their revenue and cost efficiency in a digitizing world. So that means that digital transformation for us is a main focus. Maybe important to mention that we do not mainly focus on the what, but mainly on the how, is to make the digital transformation happen. That's our expertise, and we are supporting Proximus and Ilse for 3 years, almost 3 years. So that's a bit an introduction on how we are married with Proximus.
Thanks, Christophe. So let's dig into this. Ilse, can you tell me a little bit about the situation at Proximus when this project kicked off?
Yeah, we can go to the next slide on the context. So actually what happened was that we were still doing very traditional marketing at Proximus side. We were pushing our agenda to the customers, and we didn't look very much at what the agenda of the customer was. We still had a very campaign-driven approach in which we pushed our promotions and didn't really look, as I said before, to the customer's needs. So we were missing quite a lot of opportunities. And the starting point of our challenge actually was to begin to look a lot more at the data and to see there that we were actually missing a lot of opportunities. While we were pushing, for example, on the market Nokia, we saw that consumers were looking for Samsung. And while we looked at Google figures, we saw that Netflix was a huge trending topic, and we actually didn't push Netflix, and that was a big shame because we have always had exceptional situation of being the first telecom partner in Europe to collaborate with Netflix. We were a bit of an interesting test case for them. So we were in the perfect place to push the Netflix Proximus marriage, but we didn't do anything with that. We were pushing Nokia and not talking about Netflix and Samsung. So that was a bit of the starting point of the project, and we were missing huge opportunities at that moment.
Yeah. And were there any challenges?
Well, there were plenty of challenges. We can go to the next slide, 2 slides, and one more even. What we see actually at Proximus is that it's like a lot of telecom operators. We are a big organization. We are rather engineer driven, and we have a history of having siloed teams and departments. And another challenge that we had was that not only the skills on digital were scattered all over the company, but also the budgets and also the data. So we really had difficulties to actually start a project like this because the basics weren't there. The resources, the budget, and the data were scattered all over the place. And we were also mainly focusing on executing quarterly plans. We did traditional marketing. We didn't have like a long-term vision on where we wanted to go with digital. We worked quarter by quarter, and we probably also pushed too many messages to the market in a typical traditional marketing approach. So we bombarded the customer with the things that we wanted to shout on the market rather than listening to the customer.
Okay. And Christophe, what were the challenges from your perspective?
I think if you look to Proximus, they knew what to do. As Ilse said, there was lots of expertise, and they followed IAB conferences like you're organizing today. They went to Google. So there was already a lot of intelligence within the company about what they had to do. The big challenge was how to do it and to show the company what the digital transformation would look like once the company was transformed. So to make the future very tangible and visible, breaking the silos was a very big challenge for them, or what was the main challenge for them, and besides for a lot of companies today. So maybe if we could go to the next slide. One of the things we decided to wrap it all up is to challenge the company to build a machine to sell more, and trying to show and learn the company what had to happen to make it happen. And building the machine to sell more, the ambition was to answer the challenges Ilse talked about, to face those challenges and to answer them.
Okay, that's really interesting. So Ilse, what was the machine about?
Yeah, so actually it's a metaphor that we use, but it's also something that we really try to put in practice. So we can go to the next slide now. What we actually wanted to do and are still putting in place now is that instead of having a very traditional marketing approach that is very manual and driven by our agenda, we wanted to build a machine that is always on, that is driven by the customer, that is end-to-end, so not in the silos that we typically work in, that starts from data, so that is data-driven, and that is a lot more automated, because we typically see that with all the manual work that we do, that we just can't keep up with all the different customer needs and segments that there are. So that's the focus of our machine, and that machine has as goal to sell more and ideally to sell more digitally. And what we typically saw actually is that it's quite a huge challenge to do so. It's actually a big elephant, so you can go to the next slide. And that's actually the challenge that we have had the last 2 to 3 years, was to create this, or to manage this elephant, because it was such a big transformation for our company. So it was too big to change everything at once. And what we had to do was actually to look at how could we do this specifically to make sure that we don't have to put in place the elephant all at once, but that we could do this transformation very pragmatically and piece by piece.
Okay, so Christoph, how did you approach this challenge?
Maybe you can go to the next slide. So the one elephant was too big to eat, and even if Proximus was possible to eat them, it was impossible to digest them. So one of the first decisions we have taken together with Proximus was to cut the elephants into more elephant burgers. And 3 years ago, we started to focus on one of those burgers. So you can go to the next slide, please. So we decided to start transformation with the focus on one burger. And what did it mean, one burger? If you go to the next slide, you will see that we decided to shrink the portfolio, and instead of trying to transform the whole portfolio of Proximus at once, we decided to focus on one product, Netflix. And as Ilse told, we saw before that first of all, we have a unique strategic partnership with Netflix in Europe. And second, there was also a big interest from the consumer part. So we decided to take the most strategic product and to focus on. So that was the first part of the hamburger, shrink the portfolio. And then the second part of the hamburger, and that you find on the next slide, was how we could shrink the company. So what was the shrinking of the company all about? We wanted to break the Proximus silos. So we made a squad team and recruited people from all over the company, from different divisions. We gave them full decision power on one product, selling more Netflix in a more efficient way. And the squad team reported directly to the top of the company. So we recruited specialists all over the company. We gave them full decision power and they reported directly to the top of the company. Then secondly, we added expertise from Digipolitan's part, from our part. But we also added a very good relationship with Google and other partners. So we added external expertise together with our partners to the same squad team. And then a third point, very important to mention when shrinking the company, is that we leveraged the pressure enormous. And it's a bit, one of the reasons why we like pressure. Pressure is a precious good, because you focus. You force people to be very focused. If there is a time pressure, they have to choose. They have to choose quick, to learn, to do, to test, to fail, to succeed. So that's one of the reasons why we like to put high pressure. But there is also a second reason, and you can compare it with the balloon. It's the balloon effect. If you leverage the pressure on a balloon, then the small holes become bigger and the strong parts of the balloon become stronger. So it's also by adding pressure, it gives us the possibility to see very fast what were the opportunities and problems to solve. And then last but not least, all the team that we recruited from all different departments and all different partners themselves, they all had the same target, was double Netflix sales with 1/3 of the initial budget. And to wrap it up, in shrinking the company, also important to mention is that the team only could invest 50% of the spendings before they decided to start the button. So we forced them to optimize the other 50% in action. So that's how we started with one burger, and we shrank the portfolio and the company.
Okay, so Ilse, do you want to add anything to how you leverage this internally?
Yeah. I think what Christoph explained were indeed the high-level blocks of our approach, but we also used a very concrete model to do this, and that's the D model, as it is designed by our good friends of Digipolitans. And you can find it at the next slide normally, if all goes well. Yes, there it is. And the D model actually consists out of 3 key pillars. It's detect, connect, and convert. And it's actually an approach in which you start from the customer needs and from customer data, in order to sell more digital. So typically what we do in the detect phase is to look beyond traditional marketing customer needs, but we really start from customer data and try to find the audiences that are most relevant to sell our product to. And then to concretize this in the case of Netflix, in our traditional marketing approach, we had started our marketing efforts towards the millennial segment, which seemed the obvious choice. We knew that Netflix was highly popular in that segment. But when we started looking at our data, we saw that there was another very big group of customers that was also interested in Netflix, and that was the families with kids, because there's also a lot of good kids content on Netflix. And we actually had such a big bias that we forgot to focus on them. So based on data, we added the families with kids to our audience. So that's what it's all about in the detect phase, is detecting the right audiences to whom you want to sell your product. Once we have done that, we went to the connect phase. And the connect phase is all about finding the right message to give to your customers or non-customers that will create a bond between you and your customers. What we typically did in our traditional marketing approach was to push promotions. And that was the beginning of our sales funnel, and we shouted out loud our promotions. But here again, based on consumer data, we saw actually that there was a whole other approach that would be more effective. And that was the fact that we realized that people, when they start to get interested in Netflix, they don't really look at promotions, but they look at, how do I have to activate a Netflix account? So instead of shouting out loud that we had a promotion, a special promotion of 6 months Netflix for free, we started to create content specifically for the needs of our customers around this support need. So we created movies on how to activate a Netflix account, how to watch Netflix on your Proximus TV set-top box, and so on. So connecting is about finding the right message for the earlier detected audiences, to make sure that you have a more relevant message and that customers are more open to sell in a later stage. And then the third part is the conversion part, and that's of course what we're doing it all for. It's making sure that a maximum of customers is interested and actually takes the step to buy your product. What we did before in our traditional marketing approach was to push the same product to all customers. And of course, that has an impact on your conversion rates, and conversion rates were often very, very low at Proximus. But with this new approach, we actually offered the right product to the right customer. So, for example, we have a conversion pack in which Netflix is included. So typically we pushed that product to those kind of customers, but we even went a step further. And if we knew, for example, that a certain customer or prospect was interested in Stranger Things, then we would push him an email or a banner in which we showed our convergent offer with Netflix included, but also with specific images of Stranger Things. And what we typically saw was that the conversion rates went up a lot because we were selling in the context of those prospects. So that's the context, that's the model that we applied, detecting the right audiences with a relevant message to be sure that you connect well with your customers or prospects, and then converting with a personalized offer to increase the conversion rates.
Well, that's brilliant. What about the results? Christophe, could you tell me about the results?
Well, the results were amazing. If you will see it on the next slide. The sales Netflix leads went up with multiplied with 8. The ambition was to double it, but we multiplied it with 8. Secondly, if you look to the impact of new visitors on the web, the internet, digital platforms of Proximus, by only focusing on that one product, Netflix, the total new visitors amount doubled, went up from 30% to 72%, which was enormous. And also the challenge for Proximus is to attract the new visitors to their platforms. And then last but not least, as Ilse said, before conversion ratio was between 1 and 4%, and we upgraded the conversion from 4% to 14%. So this was also more than tripling the conversion ratio on the project. So the results were extremely convincing.
Yeah, and all that at a lower cost as well. I think we decreased our cost by 6, so it was cheaper as well. So that made us happy.
Wow. And Ilse, what have you done since this campaign?
Well, this case actually has become a bit of the leading example, both in terms of the what, so how we approach our campaigns now. So for the what, we now use the detect, connect, convert model in as many cases as possible. But it also went further, and that you can, yeah, the next slide is an interesting one for that. The main changes that we have seen was that this case has inspired the whole company to also change our way of working. So what happened since then is that we actually have written, based on this case, a complete business transformation plan, in which we tried really to convince our management, and it wasn't that hard to convince them, that it was really a good idea to use this squad approach that we applied here on a much larger scale. And we actually went that far that we decided to do a reorganization within the consumer business unit of our company, in which we decided to group all the commercial digital activities. And that's a new department that is now live quite recently. And so that's the team that I'm heading now, the digital and one-to-one customer journeys department. And this approach has also become one of the two major axes of our company transformation. So concretely, what I'm doing now on a day-to-day basis is that I'm eating elephant burgers all of the time, and we try to apply the Netflix case to as many possible cases as possible. And so that's the challenge that I have now, is to really scale up what we did there. We already did some first phases, but now with the reorganization, the idea is to make this actually our mainstream marketing approach. And we already start to see some interesting results, and the challenge will be in the next 12 months to make to make sure that now the elephant that we saw in the beginning, and that was like completely overwhelming for all of us, that we now can manage to eat the whole elephant at once. So that's what we're doing now.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's we're getting close to wrapping up now. So maybe Christophe, could you just wrap up with the general learnings?
Well, as you see, it's difficult to take an organization through a transformation, because at the end, it's not about technology. It's about people. People are the main asset to make things happen and to change a company. And so, as we see it, most of the transformation tracks are led by PowerPoint presentation of books. And I can really tell you, I have already read a lot of books about digital transformation, and there are very good books about the what, but I haven't read any book about the how. And that's a bit the point. It's hard to convince people or to fall in love with a book or a PowerPoint presentation. So if you want to make the digital transformation happen, you have to make the organization guilty in a positive way to the transformation. So this case showed and learned the company Proximus how they could look like after the transformation, what nice results could be expected after the transformation. And on top, we used these nice results to sell our plan, to make it all tangible, to break the silos, and to put all the nose in the same direction.
Amazing journey. Thank you so much, Ilse and Christophe, for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
With pleasure.
Thank you, Jeanette, for summarizing the 5 themes companies must consider when going through digital transformation. And thank you both, Ilse and Christophe, for sharing Proximus's digital transformation story, as well as the next Netflix case. Well, digital transformation is not a journey companies can go on alone, and your case shows us the importance of doing business, doing this, taking this journey with the right partners. Next in line is Jonathan Robert Shaw from BBC. Jonathan is an experienced digital strategist and innovator with a proven track record in leading thinking and working with executive stakeholders at a world-class media and digital technology organization. He will tell us about BBC's perspective on digitalization and business transformation. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. You can tell that was written for LinkedIn, can't you? Okay, so I'm going to do a shorter session for you, and it's less of a specific case study, and more. I was asked if I could just share something about what the nature of a digital transformation over what's been quite a long time period has been like for the BBC, and the lessons that we've taken out of that, and what that means we're doing today. The BBC has a history in digital services. We've been transforming ourselves technologically for pretty much our entire history, starting by building radio technology and moving into television. But we've been doing the digital thing since the sort of mid 90s. So the BBC News site launched in 1997. And it was a small thing on the side. It was very much, it was something that was given space by Tony Hall, who's now our DG, was the director of news at the time. And he chose to hide it away from the rest of the organization. He protected it and stopped it from having to interact with most of the corporate culture. So it started off small, but today, it's one of the biggest sites in the UK. The BBC as a whole is the third biggest digital product portfolio in the UK, after Google and Facebook, inevitably. And so you can look at the BBC and say, well, that's been a great success. We had the news site started in 97. We had iPlayer start in 2007, and really led the way in offering a VOD market to the UK, and for a long time, if you bought a connected TV or a connected box, you would only buy it if it gave you iPlayer. That was where the content was. That's where the useful service was. So so the BBC has been through what looks like an amazingly successful sort of digital transformation, but where we find ourselves today is that we're still trying to do that full transformation of the organization. We've had these elements, these digital products that have grown up in their own space, that have been very successful, but there's a limit to how far that can go. If we continue to operate those off to one side as their own silos, that doesn't prepare the BBC to be fit for the future. We're looking at a future in which all of our audience interactions are through IP, in various different forms, and in which our relationship has been massively transformed from a broadcast relationship where we were the voice that could reach everybody with a single message, through to being able to be a BBC that's completely personalized for everybody and still brings the nation together, still does those super important things of making sure you know the most important things that are happening today, fulfills that public service mission, but it's doing it on a completely different basis, on a personalized basis. And the challenge for us is really shifting from a model that went fast, which was to carve the digital off and let it go on its own, to a model that transforms the business. And we went through a sort of middling stage of this over the past, I guess, 5 years or so, where our digital products became a much more mainstream part of what we did as an organization. We changed the structure of our technology operations. So and what we did was actually to line them up against the business structures. So each of those leads was able to have a conversation with the most senior person in television, the most senior person in radio, and really shape the future of those products together. And then they came together behind the scenes to do the trade-offs that had to happen at a platform level, that had to happen to make everything work together efficiently. That's good. That was progress, but it still didn't really transform the organization. It still didn't mean that all of our staff were thinking in a a digital way about the way they could engage customers, or even thinking necessarily about the digital products first when they were thinking about the content they were making. And so we're going into another phase now as the BBC, and again, Tony Hall, who started that news site in the first place, recently he did an internal speech. It was very much an internal message, but he was kicking us off to say, actually, we're gonna really shift the way the BBC is working towards a world where we are genuinely digital first. And one of the big challenges for an organisation like the BBC in doing that shift is our incumbency. None of this is, rocket science. None of this is wildly surprising. But we are a massive linear broadcasting organisation, and one of the things that we found is that it's become really important for us to be rigorous about the measuring the value of our investment in digital. It's very easy to get overexcited and just buy into all the newest flashiest things. So it's really important that we have that rigor about investing in the things that work. And you can see that some things have. The new site, the iPlayer site, has really worked. Other things we've tried along the way haven't, and that's fine. That's okay. That's part of the process. So we started a thing called I Wonder that was all about exploring information and factual information in a new way. It was really good. It was really lovely UI. It was really fun content. Just didn't take off, and so some things have lived and died along the way, and we've had to be quite strict and rigorous about the value calculation. But the problem is that when you do that across the organization as a whole, in the short term, the best value investment is always back in the linear, because that is still the biggest way that people get the content, and even actually young audiences get the most time from there, despite the fact that they very much are shifting into the digital age, and we're shifting with them. So we have to balance that need to be rigorous about the investments we make with a willingness to recognize that sometimes we're making investments for future potential that's hard to completely quantify today. And that's a difficult thing for the organization to do as a whole, but it's not the only incumbent problem that we have as the BBC. Because if I'm a creative person coming to the BBC and I've got a great program idea, and I might be pretty digitally aware, and I do the digital content alongside the TV programs, and you know what, I've made stuff for Netflix before, and I've thought about different lengths of formats and all the rest of it. When I come to the BBC, if you're not asking me to make programs that go out through the linear channel as well as the digital channel, you're not asking me to get in front of the biggest possible audience I can. So even as we try and do this transformation of getting people to think about the digital routes to market, first think about them with the same importance as linear, and to create the space for us to think differently about how we can meet audience needs through those digital platforms, and not just lift and shift what we've done in linear. Every time we go through that, we have to go through, we are constantly and continually managing the fact that there's not just a habit of trying to engage with the old world at the same time, we have to engage with the old world at the same time. And that makes that cultural digital transformation harder. But when we get that right, and when we're willing to invest the time in building that sort of digital understanding amongst the creatives as well as amongst the technology people, that's obviously what makes the most difference to our ability to really innovate and to really do different things in the products that we can offer audiences online. As an example of that, our BBC4, which is one of our channels that's is more niche. It's much more about intellectual content. They had a program recently which was curated and assembled entirely by AI, much to the horror of all their editorial colleagues. But the willingness for those creatives to engage in thinking about a completely different world, that's the sign that we're beginning to genuinely get the kind of digital transformation that's affecting the whole of the organization. And that cycle of having had things that were carved off into a small group, early excitement, carving something off, allowing it to grow, and then going through the very difficult process of kind of mainstreaming that. That was worth doing, because without that we wouldn't have had the platforms to build from in the first place. But it's also a bit of an inevitability, or at least it seems to be a bit of an inevitability in the media market. And so we saw that in the big macro thing of news and iPlayer, but we see it in pretty much every little change we make. So data is as for all of you, I'm sure, a major transformation for us at the moment. Despite having been measuring digital engagement with audiences for years, our maturity in data is something that we are really trying to build and is really important to us. And you see exactly the same pattern. You see an early excitement about data. You see things working when they're allowed to have some breathing space and sit off on their own and grow. But the real challenge comes when you then, and the real value comes when you're then able to integrate that back into the main operations of the BBC. And that's where we are at the moment. We're going through that difficult process of trying to change our culture, not just trying to change our operations. So what do we have to do from now? We need to make those digital routes as important to the business as linear, and as important to everyone in the business. That's really hard. We need to make products and content that's more digitally native. We need to let our creatives really go to town exploring what that could be. We need to transform our working practices as well as our products, and that's where the data thing really kicks in. And alongside that, we're doing the things that we've always done really well from within our technology divisions, building the kind of underpinning capability for IP distribution. And the BBC, by being in there early, is an expert, absolute expert, and my colleagues are astoundingly good at this, at the distribution, the IP distribution part of the world, which looks very boring from a certain point of view, but it's so critical to that audience experience. But also doing that thing of exploring what is the next bit of excitement. So for us, this is a big digital transformation. We are changing our core activity, moving towards a world in which the main way people engage with us is on IP. But in another 10, another 20 years, that will have transformed again radically. And as this big incumbent organization, we're having to learn how to plan for that change, not just now, but for that change in the future. So we're playing with things like AR and VR. We're doing some really good work with voice, and those are things that again get to sit in their little space, be a bit experimental at this stage, not necessarily be valued by all of the rest of the business yet, but build up the capability and the understanding of the market that can let us then let those creatives loose on it. And as we do that, it's going to be a continuous journey. So for us, it will never be a finished digital transformation, because every time we move into this new world, those creatives will be exploring everything that they can do with that medium, but only a few of them will be thinking about the next thing. And so when the next thing comes along, we have to go through that whole change and that education, that transformation again. And in part, that's about changing our corporate culture, changing the way that we actually innovate. We've done a whole load of work recently on making ourselves better set up to consciously innovate and be willing to take small risks and have things go wrong early so that we can learn. It's about how quickly we can make decisions, just make basic decisions. We have to make them much faster because the market's moving much faster. But it's also about an ongoing culture of change, and that it needs to become the norm in this organization that you're having to change. And that's actually a really hard thing to ask of staff, because it is tiring. And for those people who aren't necessarily future gazing, who just want to make their one piece of great, amazing content for audiences today, that is quite a lot to ask of them. And that is the cultural challenge that we are dealing with today. And that very rapidly was my little taste of what it's like to be both quite successful in digital transformation and full of many incumbencies.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for sharing with us BBC's journey in digital transformation and your learnings along the way. Very great insights. Well, now Ioana Anescu, the Managing Director of IAB Romania and one of the board members of IAB Europe, will tell us about digital transformation from a Central Eastern European perspective, with an emphasis on how companies handle digitalization and what are the general challenges of digital transformation from a corporate perspective. She will be joined by Robert Angiel, who is the daily banking tribe leader at ING Bank Romania. Robert will tell us about their corporate perspective on how organizations should deal with digitalization based on ING Bank's exemplary transformation story. Over to you, Ioana.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting us. I would like to talk today about a short image of the digital transformation in the CEE region. I will not take very long with this because I want to leave Robert to talk more about the amazing thing that he has done within ING Bank. So the CEE region is like a region of contrast because there's a good digital penetration and infrastructure, good usage of internet and of digital environments, internet and mobile within people. The demographic trend in the region is also in favor of the acceleration of the digitalization going forward because it is a younger population. Like digital natives are almost 50% of the population under 35 years old compared to the West Europe, which is around 40%. And also the regional innovative attitude is also helping the digital transformation and the digitalization of the companies take place. What lacks in this region is the education and the formal education in the digital environment at all levels, but especially in the management level, in the corporate or in the big companies. If we can move over to the next slide with some data. So 47 of the companies say that have been greatly influenced by digitalization and consider that this will contribute to the operational efficiency. So the digitalization is a benefit for the companies, and a lot of companies see this as a benefit and are confident about this. Also made it as a central part of their business strategy. However, 47% still have difficulties with the digital transformation, and that is because there's a lack of the management know-how, or as seen as a big thing to be implemented, like the elephant mentioned by our colleagues before. The benefits perceived for the next years are the process simplification, cost savings, operational efficiency, revenue growth, and better performance better measurement performance for the company. Moving over to the challenges, the lack of digital consumers. Although there's a good usage of internet. However, when it comes to digital consuming and digital payment, this is like a slightly challenge for the companies because average 60% of the purchasing process is online. However, the payment is usually done offline. The lack of digital competences in the workforce is another challenge that companies that want to move over to the digitalization in the region is compelling with. 40% of the companies say that the main obstacle is the high cost involved in this transformation. And even the resistance to change is an obstacle to do this, although they perceive it as a benefit. And going back to the beginning of the webinar, as Darwin said, the species who thrive is the species who who resist better to change, who move over to change. And there's not enough knowledge and expertise for top managers to assess and develop a model digital business. Moving over. In 90, most of the CEOs in Romania are focused on improving their skills and their soft skills in addition to digital technologies, because the challenge is not all about the technologies, but is also about understanding what people need and helping them going through this major change in their workplace. And the digital talent retention is also a major issue in implementing the transformation strategy. because they're usually the skilled workforce usually tend to move outside the country or outside the region. Can we go? Okay. There's the small and medium enterprise or the family business perspective, because most of them being founded by young people and by young entrepreneurs, they understand better and they are finding easier to implement the digitization of the company. So most of them understand and have a realistic plan to quantify these results of digitization. So at this level, the region is a little bit higher at understanding this than the global level. They declare that they have a clear business strategy, and one of the challenges is to keep up with the new technology. So within the small and medium enterprises, it's a little bit easier to understand the digital and to use it as a core of the organizational cultural value. Now, can we move to the next slide? Okay. Some of the good stuff that have happened in the last years in Romania. One example is that the automotive industry has adapted quickly in order to meet the consumer demands, and Dacia, our in Romanian main car manufacturer, has now a dedicated online selling platform where there's you can only buy cars by registering there. And there has been a proof of concept in December last year where they sold 100 cars in just a few hours by using the online strategy only. Can we move forward? Okay, just to make a small introduction to what Robert will continue after this. Some of the biggest obstacles that the financial market is seeing within the digital transformation is the threat of the security breaches, the lack of internal readiness of the management and the employees, some of the missing skilled workforce, obviously the government regulation and authorities that are not necessarily making it easier for the digital to be included in the business, and the compliance legislation with the digital data protection and all of this. I will move on to Robert and let him take over from here and talk to you more about the interesting stuff that he's doing within ING.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Robert from ING Romania. Can we please move to the slides that I have sent? In the meantime, I can say that I am in banking and actually in ING since the last 6 years. Previously to that, I've worked for about 6 years in telecom in Orange. And then previous to that, I've done e-commerce. So actually, for the last 16, 17 years of my life, I've been a digital guy. So a lot of digital transformations experiences on my side. On the other hand, I just want to share the fact that this is the perspective that I have observed in the corporations that I've been working and I'm working. This is especially related to ING. Of course, this is not the perfect success story, but it's something that we can share the learnings from. Yeah, and I will go a bit through the context where we are. I'm going to accelerate a bit, and maybe you will have also the slides shared by the organizers. I'm accelerating because I understand that we are a bit behind schedule. So in terms of context, what's happening in general in Europe, but especially in Romania, is that we actually observe a lot of growth in the e-commerce and digital usage overall. Yeah. If you are actually looking on the street, 80% of the youngsters that you see, urban or rural, they are actually users of smartphones. So if you are looking at the appetite of digital of the let's say Romanian population, this is not still the next thing. This is already something that is happening, and it's happening with the speed higher than most of the corporation can cope with. And if we go a bit to the next slide, you can see what it would be. What can you observe on the banking market? And if you're looking at, let's say, classical channels of interactions, number of ATMs or number of branches, those are either flat or decreasing, especially if you're looking in physical presence of branches on the street. On the other side, if you're looking in digital activity, this is a picture of the overall banking and internet banking usage across the market. The number of transactions done via digital channels, it's growing 22% 1 year ago. And if you're looking on the evolution of 2018 versus 2017, it's actually 50% more. If you're looking on the number of logins only, I can share that about 80% of the 80 million of logins will actually happen in ING this year, and ING is counting around 30% of the logins in the market. So you can estimate a bit the growth rate that it's happening. Let's move to the next slide, just to share that this is something that it's happening, while there is actually no service that cannot be replaced with a fintech or with another alternative on the market. And next slide, this is something that happens while the speed of change on technology and framework is incredible. So every 3 years, we actually need to replace everything related to technology on the, let's say, backbone of our digital presence. So the question is, let's move to the next 2 slides. So the question is, how can we accelerate the speed with which we are adapting to these trends? And let's move to the next slide. What you usually encounter in a classical let's say organization is that next to the business leaders of everything, big products, I don't know, services, whatever, be it in telecom or in banking or whatever, you usually find, even in agencies, you usually find special department created to accommodate digital initiatives. And they are actually responsible usually with digitalizing the existing portfolio of products, implementing the service features of customers via the digital channels, the web chats, the content management systems, everything related to digital know-how, and also especially during the last years related to digital sales. This also means this is something that they also that they need to provide next to actually, let's say, the tooling of the digital part, everything relating to the CMS, to the web shops, to the product catalogs, everything related to analytics and sharing best practices within organization. Let's move to the next one. This is something that it's working because, let's say, someone, a small team, a small squad is responsible and accountable for the delivery in digital. And also given autonomy, things get done. Yeah, and actually in this kind of situation, it's not really a matter of autonomy, because the other business, let's say, responsibles are not really messing with the digital teams. So you're creating kind of two worlds, one offline, one digital, and on this path, people are actually inspired by the digital successes. Yeah, and people see that because things in digital are really visible, sexy. Yeah, they actually want to become, and to and to do digital. And this is something that is very positive on this side. Yeah. On the other hand, this is not really scalable on the organization, at the level of the organization. It's not something that can work for the whole organization. It's either something, it's either the case where you give a small scope, or in this situation digital becomes a bottleneck for the organization. Yeah, because of that, you will find products that are first launched offline and then launch online, which is something quite contradictory to the mobile first terminology. And if you go to the next slide, I have a visual representation of the, let's say, last structure, of the structure that we had in place before we implemented the new ways of working. And if you look on the right, you see the share of digital interactions versus non-digital interactions that all customers do with ING during 1 year. So if we count all the logs in call center, or the logs in offices, or the logins in digital, you will find that 97% of the interactions are done in digital. On the other hand, if you look at how many people are really working in digital, business people working for digital, you actually see that only 4% of the organization is working in digital. So this is not really, scalable, and also it's not a well-balanced type of structure if you're really serious about doing digital. So let's skip to the next slide. Because with this in mind, the question is again, how can you restructure the organization in such a way that it's really, accelerating the digital scope. And if you're looking at the scope of the digital environment itself, it has, let's say, a foundation formed of technical stuff, especially availability and security. Then you have all the UX framework where you need all the navigations patterns, all the controls and UI types of things, and then on top of those are actually the functionalities. And let's skip to the next slide. If you want to see a bit what are the actual kind of skills that you need for all this hierarchy of things, if you're looking at the foundation, you see that you need in the foundation focus from a very highly skilled professionals, where you have people specialized in cybersecurity, people specialized in IT and infrastructure, and all these things. As long as you move forward, the type of skills that you need, it's much more, let's say, democratic dispersed around the organization. So what you want to actually to do is to embark everyone with the scope, everyone within the organization with the scope of doing digital capabilities that provide value for the customers. So let's keep a bit to the next slide. So what we did is actually that we formed, and sorry a bit for this slide, it contains a lot of new terminology. We formed multidisciplinary teams, which we named squads, where we allocated a very precise scope, like the one of Netflix before, or it can be mobile payments, or it can be digital payments in general, or it can be the login experience, yeah, where we allocated multi skilled professionals. So for example, you would see a marketing guy sitting next to a business intelligence guy, sitting next to strategy guys, and next to IT guys, trying to deliver together a certain scope. So in the end, what you see is that go to the next slide, please. What you see is actually that the whole organization is formed in these multidisciplinary teams. They all have both, let's say, change management in scope, but also run management in scope, so improving the business performance. They have both business and IT organizations, and they are responsible end-to-end for their business performance. In the end, the benefits of this is that you have much more scalability on the number and volume of resources in digital. Digital people, focused people are more focused on, let's say, gatekeeping the UX framework or the technical frameworks that we need to have in place in order for everything to be, let's say, recognizable as ING. And they are working more as gatekeeper than as bottlenecks. Also, in this way, there is no, actually, since we have the organization, we haven't launched any physical product before we launched it in mobile. And we actually are the first bank in Romania that we've launched the digital loan, that we've launched the digital mutual funds, and we have a lot of contribution in digital sales coming from those. And also we are much more faster in delivering value for customers. And this is also something that really needs to happen as a big corporation which started, focused on, let's say, offline, yeah, less ING, but in general, corporations started from an offline world, are now facing, digital native companies which have which don't have the question of how many people are working in digital, yeah, versus, let's go to the next slide, and I'm finishing, how to accelerate delivery and delivering value for the customers that differentiate us on the market. And that's my very fast forward presentation.
Thank you so much, Robert. In the industry events, we usually hear about Western European perspective on digital transformation. So it has been great to hear about the CEE perspective and how ING Bank handled their own transformation. Well, since we are lacking time and we only have left 10 minutes, well, I would like to focus on one specific question, and I aim at, mixing the Q&A session with the panel discussions, because unfortunately we did not receive any questions from the participants as of yet. If the participants has any questions, please write in the question panel. Well, my questions to our panelists, our speakers is, what is next on your journey to digital transformation, and what also you aim at helping with your clients in digital transformation? Anyone?
Well, if I can start, let's say, in our case, so the main achievement that we've had is this enriching the scope of everyone's job with the digital interactions, and quality of digital interactions. This is just the beginning of the journey, especially because this is something very easy to do, but in the end very hard to achieve. Very easy to say, but in the end very hard to achieve, especially if you're thinking that, you know, everyone needs to learn UX, everyone needs to learn the experimentations, everyone needs to learn analytics, everyone needs to learn you know, things about A/B testing and growth hacking. In the end, both the skills that we need to embark within the organization and also the availability of tools, this is something that needs to happen on an ongoing basis.
Yes, thank you, Robert. Ilse?
Yeah, at Proximus side, we still have two major challenges, I think. And one is on the people part, where we both need to start or go further in our education track. And we also need to hire some key skills that we are lacking still on data, on digital marketing. So that's really getting all the people on board of our digital speedboat and like brainwashing them with this model, detect, connect, convert that we are working on. And the second part is on the tools part as well, where we still have a lot of things to clarify, because also our tools are very scattered all over the company, the ownership, but also we have plenty of partners with which we have tools. And I think it will help us a lot if we have a better end-to-end view of these tools, because this end-to-end view will allow us on one hand to do end-to-end dashboarding and reporting, to know how are we performing from an end-to-end perspective. But on the other hand, these tools will also help us to build better end-to-end customer journeys, because now what we see is that we lose our smoothness and that we create a lot of extra efforts for our customers because our tools are not synchronized. So that's for me the two challenges at our side that we will work on in the upcoming weeks and months. People on one hand, getting them on board, and tools, making sure that they talk to each other and that they are synchronized so that we can have better end-to-end journeys.
Thank you, Ilse, for sharing that. Jonathan, are you still with us? If you are, can you please elaborate on BBC's next steps in digital transformation?
I am, yes. Yeah, so as I said, we're going through a period at the moment where we're trying to transform the way actually the content divisions, our creative divisions work as much as anything else. So we're changing the way that actually we're changing that through changing the way they think about it. We're changing it through changing the tools that they're using to do that. So giving them the tools to publish content in quite a different way and to see the impact of content in quite a different way and manage it differently. But also we're sort of breaking down the barriers between different silos within the organisation. So at the moment, content creators in one part of the division can't publish on the news site doesn't carry content from the factual division, and so on and so forth. None of which necessarily makes sense, particularly in a very personalised world. So we're breaking down those barriers and creating more opportunities for content to get out to more places. And then I guess we're transforming it through the way that we're using data. Unsurprisingly, the same as many of you, again, I'm sure, that's been something where we as well have been building up capabilities in terms of recruiting people. We're also building up the sort of underlying integration of those capabilities into our technology stack, so that we're genuinely able to see the data to make the right decisions, but also trigger automatic decision making through that.
Thank you. Well, we have a question And I would like to forward this to Jeanette and Iona. Well, the question is from Jake Lothar, and he asks, how can junior professionals get involved in a practical way? Jeanette, coming from an education and training perspective, can you please help Jake with his question?
Yeah, so can you please repeat the question?
Okay, how can junior professionals get involved in a practical way?
In digital transformation, I assume.
Yes, yes.
So I think that there's a lot of things to find in the data that is available out there, and just looking at data, I'm not sure what kind of professional, but just looking at data, it's about 90% of the world's information was created in the last 2 years. So there's a lot of data out there and a huge opportunity to find grounds for sort of selling and having conversations with the leaders within a company on how to transform.
Great. Iona, from an IAB perspective?
Get involved more in the business and try to understand the entire concept of the business. So just get out of the little square, or just get out of the daily tasks that they have to do, and try to see the bigger perspective, the bigger picture, and try to know or learn more about the other places, or the various places where digital can affect the daily life and the daily professional life. And also get involved in the business, like internship or volunteer, or all sorts of places where they can reach out of their comfort zone and step out of it and learn more about how digital has impact in the overall image of the business.
Thank you. Christoph, would you like to add anything on top of this? Any advice for young professionals?
I think maybe some global advice. Your question was, how do you see your journey?
Yeah, sure.
I think for between brackets old school companies, there is a big focus on the destination of the journey. And I think in this new economy, future is changing that fast that I would give everybody the advice to focus more on the journey itself, to look how you can shrink projects, onboard young people, learn from them and let them learn, do, fail, succeed, learn again, adapt. So if I could give one major important message, it's not about the destination, because at the moment you have implemented the destination you think is ideal. If you look with the eyes of today to the future, you're already wrong or too late or at the wrong place. So I would anybody advise to really focus on the journey, on the how.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, to wrap up, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our webinar, and we'll leave the webinar with some learnings you can apply to your own businesses. Well, as my colleague from IAB Europe, Alex Macarescu, wrote in a recent blog post on digital transformation, today our speakers actually told us we already observe digital transformation is not only about technology now. It's not a technological issue only. It's a cultural shift, and it necessitates for a radical change of attitudes and the way we do business. So, as a reminder, the session has been recorded, and the recording will be shared with you, all participants, 2 hours after the event. It will also be promoted on the IAB Europe website and social media channels. See you soon in our upcoming webinars.
Goodbye. See you all.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.